Good evening. My name is Mackenzie Wilson, and welcome to the only show in Alberta for Alberta Landlords, the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk. Tonight, somewhat solo. Chris Noble, as he likes to say, he's out on assignment. So it will be myself tonight alongside our partnership, Brett Turner. Brett's got a fantastic show lined up that we kind of been talking on the background or on the virtual studio before the show, and it's going to be really good. A conversation around how we want to look at our investment portfolio and how we can look at maybe not so obvious variables or components to make the property cash flow a lot better. So Brett's going to shed some insight on that, and especially if you are a accidental landlord, this might open up your eyes to some new opportunities that maybe change your mind. If you were thinking of renting it out for now, then getting it sold and off your plate as quickly as possible, this could possibly change your mind. So it's going to be a really good show. I'll make through a few announcements right now as well. As always, if you guys are new, we just added, I think, another 40 some people this week onto the group. So guys, welcome. This is a great community. As you've already probably noticed, we're really highly engaged, and we've got a great group of landlords willing to help each other. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. We can be found on all our shows or live stream to YouTube. So at findgreattenants.com will take you directly to the YouTube channel. And then we have our own social kind of community platform. It's called Mighty Networks. And really, that's like a private playground, Facebook kind of feel for our community. And the reason why we're kind of slowly angling the conversation that way is it's given us a lot more tools to better collaborate and kind of archive that information and save these great tidbits of conversation that are currently happening on Facebook. But then the challenge is a month later, you can't find that conversation when you heard that really good tip you want to go back and look up. So that's why we're making this move over to Mighty Networks. Without further ado, I got Brett patiently and quietly waiting in the background. I'm going to get him on the show. It is a two-man show tonight. Brett, my friend, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome, Mackenzie. Thanks very much for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to be kind of the tech guy in the background. I'll get people engaging in the comments. We'll bring them up. Brett, you'll kind of run the show. You got some good topics tonight that we were just kind of discussing beforehand. So I'm kind of excited to see which way this conversation will shape and how it will go. Yep. But another fun tip, and maybe I'm going to throw something at you to kind of enlighten. You and me were talking earlier today about how we could kind of provide more value going forward to the community. And I noticed that what I was seeing was these shop talk shows were really good with helping people and landlord when they're in a specific trouble or spot. But we have so much content. I know you guys bring a lot of value as well. We're thinking about doing some additional shows for the membership. So, and I know you've kind of taken a leadership position on that and gave me some good ideas. Do we want to give a sneak preview or shed some light on that?
I mean,
you didn't cover this, by the way.
We're talking about this would be great, but
yeah.
Do I get on my own gold microphone, Mackenzie? Is that what happens? I don't know, but
there's lots of possibilities.
Yeah, that's right. We're not going to rule it out, I hope.
No.
I've just seen your forum grow, and I'm so impressed at the engagement and seeing so many Alberta landlords, toughing it out there in a tough economy, in a tough market, in a tough field, real estate, not an easy field to stay in. And just to have a community like this where we can talk about the issues that we're going through, and we can collaborate together to work towards solutions for very unique situations that happen in the business of landlording. And so to have the opportunity to share my insights and my experience, it's a great honor, and thanks very much for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, totally. I think as we kind of talked about it, and the direction that we really want to take this is it's all about providing value, but there's so many different nuances to the business. Obviously, there's that particular moment you're in a tough bind. You hop on the group, you ask your landlord question, and you get the feedback. And that's part of where the shop talk came from. We answered your guys' questions live on the show. So that's not going to change. I think that's really a good bread and butter where we're at. But some more value as we bring in, let's talk about an investment perspective, or maybe Brett, you've got market updates. You've got, when we start talking about, let's say joint ventures, RTOs, there's so many different nuances in this kind of investing in landlording game. We're going to do a focus series, or maybe it might be called Feature Fridays, but we're going to have subject matter experts. So, Greenleaf and Redline Real Estate. So what Brett brings to the table, they're stepping up. They're going to provide monthly content as well. And we're going to focus those conversations on all these little trades and different, maybe it's a mortgage broker 1 month or something. We'll bring these different people in, focus those conversations around that. And that's going to be another whole value add that we've got coming down the line. So super excited that Brett, you've stepped up on board to help us out with that. And folks, watch for that in the future.
It's going to be great. I think it's just a progression from, the real core fundamentals of your forum of supporting Alberta landlords. There's no other place like it on the web, and it's a real special place that all of the members here, I think, should be proud and to have access to something like this. But there is an opportunity for all of us to grow and learn more and do more. And a little bit about what we'll talk about today as we look at the property management issues and dealing with tenants and all those sorts of things. We see a lot of that on the forum here. But what we want to talk about today is the concept of asset management rather than just property management. And I think when you level yourself up as a landlord and real estate investor, you can start to put some of these little problems into perspective, and they don't weigh you down as much, and they get easier for you to handle and mow through. So looking forward to talking a little bit about that in our talk today.
Well, let's get into it then. So you kind of nailed out the introduction. You said you wanted to mention some stuff about the market. We got some changes going in the market. Some news as well.
Yep. So I have a market outlook video that I posted here last week or a couple weeks ago. So for any of the new forum members, if you're wondering about the Alberta or the Calgary real estate market, you can take a look at my YouTube video where I break down how I think our year is going to go. We are going to have a better year in Alberta real estate this year. We can be looking at raising rents. We can be a little bit more entrepreneurial with our approach to landlording and property ownership. So I do feel we're going to have a better year that way. But just in the last week and change, there's been some stats releases and some reports released by some larger boards within real estate. So the Canadian Real Estate Association is actually calling for a rise in prices in Alberta. And I don't know if you saw it or not, Mackenzie, but did you want to take a guess at what the Canadian Real Estate Association is forecasting for prices in Alberta real estate this year?
So I did read a headline, and I was looking at
okay.
Well, I don't know the number. I said I saw a headline that they're saying single family homes are expected to increase this year in price.
Yep.
I did read a headline down in the States that the whole states as a whole are having the best sale on record since 2014, which is 6-7 years going back now, and mainly because of COVID. People can't leave the home, so they're upgrading to bigger homes because they need more space for each other.
We're in the right business. We're in the right business here as landlords, for sure. Lots of other businesses have had hardship during the pandemic here, but being a landlord is a good business to be in. But I'll save you the trouble of having to throw a number out there, Mackenzie. And the Canadian Real Estate Association is forecasting a 7% increase in prices in Alberta real estate this year. Which is a little more optimistic than I'm ready to provide. My outlook is a little closer to even or 1 or 2%. The Calgary Real Estate Board is forecasting a 1% increase in prices this year. So the fact that we're even having this conversation after just 6 years of just the hardest, toughest time to be a landlord in our province, the fact that we're in this conversation, I think, is a really good thing. And it's the right time for Alberta landlords to be thinking about their properties from a wealth building perspective, more so than just like staying in the game and not having to be pushed out of my investment properties because being a landlord is tough, right? So I think it's an okay time to talk about shifting gears and looking at the asset management perspective rather than just getting through each month, which was a grind for a really long time here.
Yeah, I mean, we've been rolling with the punches, like you said, 6 years, almost half a decade, and it's over half a decade. And we've been, where's that light at the end of the tunnel? And now we're like, yeah, these things are starting to come to fruition. And COVID was, again, the weirdest curveball we've ever seen yet in terms of what happened to the market. But if folks, if you've guys got those two doors plus kind of units, not the single or two bedrooms or more, not just one bedroom, where people can rent out jointly as roommates. And then you have a little more room for that home office. That's really paying dividends right now. We've seen that kind of push for more space.
For sure. Yeah. And that's going to be a trend that's going to continue. So you're seeing in the news now the release of all these stats, and the census, the Canada census for population growth came out as well. So I'm going to be releasing a video tomorrow that talks about the Keystone XL pipeline, but buried within that are some of the infographics from Statistics Canada, which shows Calgary, Alberta, and Edmonton is right behind it here as one of the fastest growing cities in all of Canada right now in terms of population. Really? Yeah. So we're getting the right kind of good news here. And when we talk about Keystone XL and the pipeline, I had Canadian Real Estate Wealth Crew magazine, one of their editors contacted me today to provide some content ahead of a magazine article they want to write about the pipeline, because everybody outside of Alberta just thinks, oh, it's another pipeline canceled. Alberta is just going to be, another more bad news, and the storm continues for Alberta. And many Albertans feel that way too. But it is something that you need to look behind the headlines, because the fundamentals are showing some really good news for Alberta property owners and landlords. And those are the stats and those are the news articles we should be paying attention to, not a pipeline being canceled for the second time and being caught in the middle of another geopolitical mess we have no control over. So look behind the first page, look in a little bit deeper, and I think you'll see that we've got some clear skies ahead of us here this year and should hopefully have a much better year than last year.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I didn't really know, well, we talked a little bit more pre-show of this, but I'm going to do my homework next time, Brett, next time we do our next show together, and I'll have some more market insights to kind of join in with you. But you caught me by surprise. But it is a positive thing to hear that. So why do you think right now they're predicting that? Like, why are we actually seeing an increase? We've been flatlined so long. Yeah. What are some fundamental drivers behind the picture?
Some of the big ones related to it are our affordability. So we look attractive to real estate consumers simply because we've had nowhere near the escalation in pricing that the GTA and the Lower Mainland in Vancouver have. And so by contrast to that, it doesn't take a big price increase to have a larger percentage increase in our pricing, right? So that's one factor of it. But what I feel is the underlying component to this is if you look at the trend of a drive towards the suburbs for both value and for affordability, you can just get a bigger house in the suburbs for less money than you'd spend to be in something inner city. Calgary is kind of, and Alberta are kind of like one macro level up or one level up from that with the same basic logic, in that, if you're living in a post-pandemic world, you perhaps don't need to be right downtown. You don't need to be in any specific city anymore to do many professions. Certainly, the traditional white collar office dynamic is going to be completely different going forward. And so by virtue of people not having to be right downtown, now it's opened up the possibility to perhaps relocating to where you can, raise a family, you can get more house for a better dollar. And we're seeing, at least in terms of my brokerage right now, not only are we seeing real estate investors taking advantage of our strong rent to price ratio in Calgary, but we're also starting to see people that are later in their careers that are ready to cash out of the real estate that they've got in Toronto or in Vancouver and come through to Alberta, where they can get way more value and settle into this next phase of their lives in a much better net worth and equity position. So because of that, I think it's going to mean more activity, and Calgary continues to rank high in terms of a quality of life index. And because of all of that, I think that's what's supporting the price increase forecast.
Awesome. So yeah, relative to the rest of Canada, our price point in Alberta and in Calgary and Edmonton, those markets, we're significantly lower, and our rents are still reasonably or relatively just as high or comparative. So we've got really good ratios when it comes to
Alberta, Southern Alberta, and Calgary in particular, was developed as a suburban homeowner town. We just have a lot of these master planned suburban communities. and we don't have a lot of the traditional small apartment buildings or fourplexes or that type of real estate for landlords to own. And so because of that, now this move to the suburbs, the bylaw with regards to secondary suites here, there's a supply crunch for really good rental properties right now. And so investors are seeing that opportunity to provide supply in these suburbs where people want to live. And that's part of the reason why Calgary and Alberta are getting some looks now. So yeah. I suspect that the insight is investor focused first. Investors are jumping in right now, and then you'll start to see this wave of more conventional consumerism in our real estate market here. As soon as we start to see some pricing increases, people are going to love the news and they'll get off the sidelines. And I hope that that's the catalyst we need to see some genuine price growth in our market.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one point too, I want to highlight, you mentioned 2 comments ago, Brett, is COVID has been a net positive to, we're seeing this movement to the suburbs, don't need to be physically located to the place of work anymore, because big shift is a lot of these jobs that might have been on the fence where people were going to the office, and now they've been forced to work remotely, and business owners and companies are seeing, hey, this is actually productive and doable, and I'm looking at my bottom line. I don't need this office space anymore. That trend will stick around in some form or fashion, which only makes it stronger, more of a push to these prices getting pushed up. So love that tip. Do you want to dive a little bit on this Keystone and how this affects Alberta? What's your take on that?
Yeah, this is making a lot of headlines right now, and I'm looking forward to releasing a video where I talk about it in a little bit more detail. But the key takeaway here that a lot of people are missing is that, this was a pipeline expansion. It's not canceling an existing pipeline. Some people think that that's what's actually happening here, is that, an existing pipeline is being shut down, and that's not the case. So first off, that's a big piece of information for people that aren't familiar with the oil and gas industry and pipelines to point that out. The other part, I think, and what's been well known within the oil and gas and energy industry in Canada is that this was a tenuous issue because it had already been canceled once by the Obama administration back in 2015. And then Trump brought it back in. And when he did that, it was great, good news for us. Let's jump on board. Let's give him $1 billion of Albertans' money to go and put some wind in the sails behind this project. But there was always a concern, especially when the early campaign promises from the Biden campaign started to talk about canceling it. So this isn't a surprise. It's making headlines now, but lots of people knew that this card was in the deck, it's regrettable. But it's not going to drive Alberta down any further than it is right now. And I think that had it been there, it might have helped to bring in more revenue and make things a little bit easier, but it's certainly not going to hold us back. And that our growth, our Albertans' growth, and the growth in our market here is going to be more related to the key fundamentals regarding population growth and affordability, quality of life index, all of the same type of stuff that a real estate market that didn't have an oil and gas industry would count on. Well, Calgary and Alberta in particular are going to look more like that going forward.
Perfect. Love it. Okay.
Look at the video. I'll release it tomorrow. I'll talk a little bit about some of the particulars. I'll talk a little bit about the stats and all of that stuff behind the underlying market here. But don't get sucked into the fear factor that you can see reading the headlines here. The underlying fundamentals of population growth and affordability and all of that are good signs for us.
Yeah. And I guess another, as I'm just thinking this through too, as in we still have capacity to move the product. Unfortunately, it's just done by more expensive medium, which is rail cars. Yeah. So we have that. That just means the bottom line is a little bit higher than what they would like, but we're still able to function, as you noted, Brett. So
a couple other TMX is still a go. That's happening, and that provides the capacity that we need for a lot of the projects that are coming on stream for the next 5-6 years or so. So that's good news. And as we've seen, lots can change in that time period. So it's not good news, but it's not bad news necessarily for our economy. That I think is a key takeaway with this. And Yeah, don't let it drag you down. It's not going to make things any worse than they already are. I mean, if we've survived these two different administrations, the NDP and the Liberal government here in Alberta, we've survived floods, we've survived forest fires, and now we've had to deal with this oil price shock from OPEC, and we've had Keystone getting canceled the first time, the pandemic coming in here now lately. I know it's depressing to think of all the things we've gone through. So I don't think that this issue is anything that Albertans can't tough it out through and find a way to move forward without having it in place.
Absolutely, and this is a long-term game. It's not an overnight sprint by any means. Okay, well, I like how we round that out. We'll watch for that video tomorrow, Brett. Let's get into kind of the meats of this show tonight. So we're talking about this different perspective on asset management. So what is the difference? I know you mentioned to me this before, and you had me thinking about, you're talking about asset management versus property management, and there's some nuances and differences there. So paint us the picture.
Yeah, you bet. So, I mean, this is the Alberta landlord community, and so many people will, I think, diminish the sort of role of a landlord when you talk about being a landlord. Being a landlord makes it seem very much like it's a property owner and a tenant relationship, and that's really all that it is. And when I look at the forum, there's lots of landlords out there that are struggling with tenants. And there was a couple posts, just how do you manage, how do you keep it up, how do you have the energy to keep doing this business when we have all of these problems and all these challenges to work with. And I think it's really important for us not only to think of ourselves as landlords, but to think of ourselves as real estate investors and entrepreneurs. Because we own these assets that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have the better part of 40 to 50% of someone else's income and livelihood supporting our own wealth with each of the units that we own. Mm-hmm. And we provide a roof over someone's head that is further back on the wealth ladder than we are as landlords. And so I think if you think of yourself and give yourself a bit of a pat on the back for having made it to this stage in life and having had the forethought to get into real estate investment and own income producing assets in a time when income is hard to come by in a pandemic like we're in, you should carry a little bit of confidence into that, and just this mindset shift that you're not just a landlord that deals with tenants. You're managing your own asset, right? You're managing your house. Your house is your biggest asset. Well, your rental properties are an extension of that. And if you can carry that confidence and mindset, a lot of these issues that we see with tenants, they just seem smaller, and you'll have more confidence in them. Your delivery will become smoother. You'll start to just look at your network a little bit differently, and the business just gets easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was totally reading a question here, so I'll leave that on the side there. But
yeah, I can keep going. That's fine. I don't mind.
Yeah, no, you should. I have no feedback for you at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so asset management versus property management. Well, when you're managing a property, and I own a property management company, and we do this where we look after a property for someone. We manage the tenant that's in there. We make sure that the tenant is doing what they have agreed to do within their lease, and we make sure the landlord is doing what they've agreed to do within their lease to the tenant. We fix problems that show up. We handle issues that show up with tenants and other stuff. And you can manage the property like that. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about asset management, you're not just managing the space between the paint inside the property that you own. You are managing that entire asset and the financial performance of that asset that you have, right? And that's what I want to just plant that seed with your membership, to carry that out of this video today, is that there's so much more to this than just being a property manager and looking after tenants, right? You've got this asset worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's your responsibility to manage that asset to its fullest so it can do for you what you bought it for, which is generate wealth for you and your family. And if you focus on the bigger issues that underline successful asset management, property management is just a smaller piece within that. And you'll get better and better at that the more that you work the model as an asset manager and an investor rather than just a property manager.
It really does. And my thought came back to me on that last point. I wanted to also say, we're focusing this conversation around, the intentional landlords and investors on this group. But I also know there's a large subset of our membership that are accidental landlords. And even if you're accidental, you're in this position where you've moved out and you've had to keep your original property due to whatever reason, there might be some opportunities as you look here. I mean, we're also in record low interest rates right now. So for example, I'm just renewing my mortgage and I kept my rate, my monthly payment the same. But I went from I just chopped down 5 years on my amortization period.
Right.
So I just
great. I mean, you're 5 years closer to the finish line here, and can you imagine that, being mortgage free on a property, and how now you get all that income back and what that would mean for you? I mean, that's what we're into this for, right? Is to end up in that position. And you can accelerate that path by doing what you just did, Mackenzie, which is not just look at, the grief your tenants are causing you and, dealing with that set of problems, but looking at your asset as a whole and working the whole model, the whole property, the whole income statement, the whole expense statement, and how can you do this? So you mentioned accidental landlords. We have hundreds of them that we manage their property for, and this is something that we mention to them when we bring them in. We have to say to them, well, the insurance that you have right now is probably a homeowner's insurance policy. You need to go, you're now making the decision to become a landlord, and so you need to go and get an insurance policy that reflects this, and this, right? But also know that you can write off your insurance payments now. You can write off your property management fees. You can write off your mortgage interest on your property. You can write off repairs and maintenance, right? So we want to make sure that accidental landlords understand that you now have the opportunity to be an intentioned real estate investor. And if you can flip that switch inside and take advantage of all of those things, well, even if the property that you have isn't necessarily the best income property, right? It might not make it might not be the best possible thing that you could buy for the same dollar to generate the most cash flow, but you can make some subtle changes, refinancing the property, getting the right type of insurance on it, doing some repairs and maintenance ahead of your tenant moving in, so that you don't have the after hours calls that increase your operating expenses. Little things like that can be done to improve the overall performance of the property. And if you're in a position where you've gone and you've worked the model, you've worked your property, you've made it efficient, and you've got a good positive cash flow situation, well, when you get that call about your tenant moving out, it doesn't burn you as bad as it does if your butt's right on the wire with your income, right? Then it's a different sort of mindset, a different feel, and that's what's draining for landlords, is when that bad news comes, and you can make it easier on yourself by working the whole financial picture rather than just the property management component.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to throw one, I guess, note or caveat that when I was talking about how I cut 5 years off my amortization period, I wouldn't have minded of keep that in place if I could have kept. So I'm moving different product sets. So I'm moving into a new mortgage where I have a readvanceable HELOC, so I can make some different plays and do some other investments. So I had to go into a shorter amortization because that's just the way the product came in. But I mean, if I had the choice, I probably would have still kept it, and I would have dropped my cash. My mortgage would have dropped from $1,550-ish down to $1,220 and change. And so I would have been banking another, $200, $300 of cash flow there, and then take that money in, and then you can either lump sum to pay it back to still get that same kind of mortgage pay down speed of dropping off the 5 years of amortization. But you also have your cash flow to make other decisions and put yourself in a strong position. Like you just highlighted, Brett, cutting it down the wires is such, I've been there. It's a super uncomfortable.
We've all been there. We've all been there, right? I mean, that's how you get better. You don't, you until you've been there, you will make mistakes until you find yourself there one day, right? And it's
exactly. So yeah, there's just, like you said, there's so many different nuances in this game, is why these conversations are so important. And Brenda Bastel, she was one of the previous my guest landlords on the show. She's been at it for a long time, very well experienced, and she says right here, the business does get easier the longer you're at it. So I mean, that's part of having these kind of conversations. So yeah, like you said, Brett, you're talking about these nuances of managing it. So are we going to dive in that next line? Sorry, man. I'm trying to.
Yeah, we can. So I did prepare a really quick case study here that we could pull up, and there's a lot of numbers on this. This is a spreadsheet. My background before being in real estate was an engineer, and so I don't trust anything until I see it in Excel. And so I've just put together a pro forma, is what we call it, of one of the deals that we sell on the investment division side of our real estate brokerage here. And I get asked a lot about how do you find cash flow and how do you get it? And I will leave a comment up where we can show this so that you guys can download it if you want and you can see it, or you can just send me a direct message as well, and I'm happy to email you this and talk through it in a bit more detail. But I just want to scratch the surface on it today to talk about some of the things related to asset management that matter so much to real estate investors that it's just so easy to overlook them. And so when I'm looking at a deal, I look at, the financing part of it and the debt service part of it. So are you financed properly, right? You just mentioned here, Mackenzie, you were able to trim 5 years off your mortgage by you didn't refinance your property. You just decided to re-amortize it over a different length of time and to take the same payment and choose to pay off more principal rather than interest. But if you were in a negative cash flow situation, you could make the decision then to extend your amortization. And so it's a little hard to see here. But when we're selling investment property and we're really trying to deliver the highest possible cash flow for our clients there, one of the things that we suggest is that you increase the amortization of your loan so that rather than paying it off over 25 years, you can pay it off over 30 years. And then this will reduce your monthly mortgage payments each month to just give you that additional net income cushion that you have. And then if you're cash flowing well and the money's coming in, you always have the option of just making a lump sum principal payment at the end of your year if you want to. But it gives you that flexibility. The payments coming out just aren't quite as big. And so your amortization period is something that you could consider for that. So that's about halfway down.
Yeah, like you said, Brett, it's that sleep at night kind of fun, right? I mean, I know some folks here, like you said, if you're break even every month, if you could do a refinance, typically it's about 3 months interest, give or take, is what the typical penalties are to break or refinance. But if you run the numbers on what the current interest rates are right now, especially if you have an interest rate of like say 2+ years ago, it's probably around that 2.5% to 3% range.
Yeah.
That play might buy you a couple extra $100 each month, and all of a sudden, if you're banking $200 to $300 a month, and give a year or half a year of no real issues, you put in another $600 to $1,000 in that reserve fund. All of a sudden, you can be comfortable, and then that stress goes away, and then it clears your mind to focus on these other parts.
We had a client that came to us and just asked us to evaluate the value of their property so that they could carry that valuation into their discussions with their bank to hopefully restructure the debt on their property. And what this guy came out with, I thought was just a brilliant balance that he struck on this. Is that he had paid down a lot of principal and he had a good equity position in his property. So what he did is he contacted his lender. And lenders are reaching out to people about these days. You may have received a letter where they know that interest rates are coming down and they don't want to lose you to another bank. And so they're actively saying to people, go and re-amortize or refinance your properties. But this guy went and refinanced his property just a little bit. So he didn't go and take all of the equity out that he could. He took just a little bit to put that into a reserve fund or a slush fund so that he had something there in the event that he had a vacancy or that, a major appliance or something went. So that opportunity to do that again reduces the stress factor and takes away from that shock of being told that something major in your property has gone. So he refinanced to get that little bit of extra breathing room in his property, which I thought was just a really smart thing to do. And then he kept his mortgage balance, other than the little bit that he refinanced, he re-amortized at that same thing, similar thing to what you talked about, Mackenzie, and then reduced his payments at the same time. So it'll take him a little longer to pay off his loan, but his payments will be lower because he's decided to amortize that debt pay down over a longer period of time. So he's now walking into, he's got a better interest rate. So, he's walking into this sort of new time where he's got a little bit of extra capital in reserve, and he has lower monthly payments and a better cash flow position. And he didn't have to do anything to his property to get this better cash flow other than just working the phones with his mortgage broker to pull a better deal out of it for himself. So, I thought that was a great idea. And one of the ways you can manage your asset to put yourself in a better income position.
Yeah, love it. We got some questions here. Do you want to throw in a live question in the mix here?
You know what? Why not? We'll make it through what we make it through here. And I know it's a lot of content and all that, but yes. So considering buying a new place to move into 5% down or at my current house, this is the best strategy to get started in investment real estate, is to buy a property at 5% down with a basement suite in it that cash flows well for you, and move into it for a while and then move out and keep it and rent out both of the units and do that again. So I was asked to talk about how do you get off the ground in real estate investing with not a lot of equity, and you can do that twice. You can generally do that twice before the insurers will say no more, but a good mortgage broker will get you in for 2 of those. So you can do it. If you're moving into it, then you can get an insured loan at 5% down, and that's the way to do that.
Yeah, I'd probably throw one quick caveat. I know that because this 5% down or less than 20% down is typically meant for homeowners, right? On a homeowner purchase where they have the intent to live in the property. If you are intending to live in it for some period of time, then this is technically a doable play. It's not a play where I'm going to go in at 5% and then 3 months later I'm moving out, or 6 months more I'm moving out and I'm doing it again.
6 months is okay. 6 months is fine. You won't end up on a blacklist or anything for that. But if you immediately moved into it and tried to accelerate this too fast, right? Like some really eager investors, like I'm moving into a place at 5% down, and before they even have their closing date, they're trying to buy another one at 5% down, right? That's too aggressive, and you will get into trouble with that. And you don't want to get blacklisted by the mortgage insurers, because it will really make things difficult for you when you get later into your investing career. And when we move from property management to asset management to portfolio management, which we'll talk about one day here on your show, Mackenzie. Wow. When we get to that stage and you're trying to keep 20 something plus properties together, you don't want to be on a blacklist with your mortgage insurers. So do your time, your 6 months, and then go and do another one. And if you work that game plan, you can get a great start into real estate. And this is a good year to look at that, because interest rates are low, pricing is still low right now, and we're at the bottom of our real estate cycle. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, just wanted to throw the caveat: there has to be the attention to live it for some period of time. So
yeah, 6 months. You plan to do it for 6 months. You won't hear from CMHC after that.
Okay. Do we want to keep the pro forma up? Do you want to pop?
Let me just run through this. I know it's a lot, and then we'll jump over to this. I know it's, and we'll put the spreadsheet up on there, and you guys can take a peek at it. But we talked about mortgage payments and maximizing your minimizing rather your payments from that perspective. Maximizing your rental income is one of them, but making sure that you've got vacancy lower too. So don't go and look to absolutely wrench out your top level rents if it's going to limit the pool of tenants that can rent from you, where you need to have like a roommate style setup where people can afford to rent your property, and then risk additional vacancy. So I've always said to landlords, the most stable position to be in, and the one that stresses you out the least and allows you to focus on your portfolio rather than individual properties, is to price your rentals such that you get an equity building tenant in there that's not going to be lighting up your phone with every little issue and stressing you out and bringing you evictions and all that sort of stuff. So have a nice clean property and leave a little bit on the table for your tenants when you go to rent it out, so that you get way more tenants to choose from. That's the strategy I like and I recommend. And then once you have them in there and you show them you're a good landlord, when your renewal comes up, you can increase the rents a little bit on them at that time. So Great way to do that. So we talked a little bit about rental income really quickly here on operating expenses. So property management. So this particular deal shows property management at 0% because it's built into the asking price. But that's another way that you can do this. I mean, you're managing it yourselves if you're a landlord here. So you don't have to charge yourself that right out of the gate. Can't do a lot with property tax. Insurance is something, though, that I've found lots of investors are often either overinsured or they've set their deductible to be too low, where you've got a small deductible, and if you got a deductible like $500 or $1,000 or something like that, your premiums are way higher. But if you set it a little bit higher than that because you've renovated your property, you've got a property inspection done before you buy it, you're not expecting any major disasters, you can increase your deductible and your insurance expense will come down dramatically. So that's something that is probably for a different conversation, but is a quick tip that I've used for many years, is just have a slightly higher deductible and manage your properties well, and you won't have to worry about as high of an insurance expense.
Okay, and with the vacancy, you got it at 4%. So, but this is a suited property, right? So, is there, because what is it typically 8% is equivalent to 1 month's vacancy?
Yeah, that's right. So, what I do for my vacancy rates, because I got to sell this to people that don't live in Alberta. So I went and just grabbed, this is from the 2019 civic census number and what our vacancy rate was during that time. So I can just point to the number that's there. In practice, the vacancy rates for, properties that are well renovated and are well located and are properly acquired and managed is lower than 4%. You can do better than the average, but that's what I put on there for this particular deal.
Okay, cool. Yeah, love it.
A couple more here, utilities and repairs and maintenance. I mean, utilities are going to be what they're going to be, but there are strategies that you can do to manage these, where you can have the way that we do it, if it's a suited property, is we'll have a lease that will have a fixed rate for a tenant that is renting from you as a base rate, but then there's a utility surcharge that's there based on either the number of adults that are living in the property or the number of bedrooms is usually how we split it up. And then you would have from there, you can not only just charge them the base rate, but you have within your lease the provision to charge them if they overconsume the utilities on their property. You can come in there and say, well, look, you've used way more than what your allotment is, and you have that term within your lease to do that. So that's how we do it to manage the utilities part of it. But other stuff like programmable thermostats that you can log into and watch and see. There's wireless technology now that will allow you to do that remotely. So making some investments in technology and using smart home technology to monitor utilities consumption is something that landlords could consider to do. And then other stuff like making a capital investment in like windows or a proper roofing system to make your property just insulated that little bit better, or buying a newer place rather than an older place to have your utilities just be a bit more efficient, or a couple of ways that you can manage that part.
Yeah. I would just second what you said there. A little bit of wording in the contract to put the onus back on the tenant that, hey, if you don't keep your utilities in check, you will get billed quarterly. So you're now motivated to manage your utilities, turn off the lights, and don't use the stove to heat the house, kind of thing. So yeah.
Yep. And then repairs and maintenance. This is one of the toughest areas to get good at, and usually takes experience to do this. But one of the easiest and best ways to have a low repairs and maintenance expense is to make sure that your property is in great condition before you start renting it out. So get a property inspection done, even if, you've owned your property for a while. If you're not really disciplined at looking over every little thing, and I was never that good, I'm not a really handy guy, but go out and just get a home inspection done on your own property as it sits, so you know what's going on inside it. And then you can plan ahead. You're not going to be under pressure. This happened to me on Christmas Eve. Both of the furnaces in my house died on Christmas Eve. And so I had to pay the triple time to get the guys to come out and fix my furnaces. When if I would have looked at it, I might have had some insight that I should probably get somebody to come out and look at this in advance during the daytime. So if you can think ahead that way, and it's like going to a doctor before, for a regular checkup rather than when you feel sick, you're not caught off guard. And you can do the same thing with your properties to get them looked over by a home inspector, so you can plan ahead to some of these things rather than have to deal with them as an acute issue, when you've got a tenant living in the place.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying there, Brett. Maintenance is a proactive, not a reactive
Yes.
strategy. And I will, just from my own personal experience, to throw this in, it was definitely the hardest number to get the finger on the pulse on. I would just generally say if you have an older product, mine are older. I've got 19 late 50s bungalows. I'm like that 10 to 12% for maintenance. Maybe
Yep.
I thought it was 8%, but no, I've not had that kind of luck. But and this 2 to 3% would be a condo townhouse that's new, or like
this is set at 2% for this one because it's brand new and you have a comprehensive builder warranty for the first year, and then it slides down from that. So that's why this is lower than it typically should be. If you're looking at a resale property that's 20, 25 years old or so, then I wouldn't have an R&M number lower than 6% for them. But you can lower your operating expense if you have capitalized. So you've bought a property and renovated it to get ahead of repairs and maintenance issues later. So it's pay up front as part of the acquisition process, or pay later when something shows up. When do you want to take your medicine, right? So that's that. Before you take the sheet away, I just want to draw attention to part of the asset management things that so many investors forget about. But if you look on the returns thing on the side, so you make money in real estate in 4 ways: either the value of your property going up from an appreciation rate, the positive cash flow that you get from having more rental income than all of your expenses combined on a deal, or the very bottom there, the active value add. This would be like renovating a property to increase the value, so legalizing an existing illegal secondary suite, that sort of stuff. But the mortgage pay down is such a huge component of owning properties, and we forget about this, but we make money while we sleep in the landlording business. That's what we do, right? Somebody else is paying off our debt for us here, and don't lose sight of that, right? When your tenant is giving you grief, remember they're paying your mortgage for you, right? You don't need to do anything other than keep your property full, and this is going to show up for you and keep your payments happening. You'll have this principal being paid down. And so I've always, taken some stock in that. Like when I have a really shitty week, work has been tough, things are not going well, but I think overall all the properties that I own, how much principal I'm paying down every month without actually having to go and put my own hours towards that. It's a really uplifting feeling. It gives you energy to face the challenges that a landlord faces day in, day out.
It's so true. And I'm going to just kind of give that another lens and highlight what Brett's saying, because I think it's such a true point. Is you think about your mortgage as a bank account, and every time a payment comes into it, of course, some of it goes to interest, or half of it goes to interest, or wherever you are in your cycle. But the other chunk is someone putting $500, $600 into your account every month. And if you're on the newer side, just getting into this game, it's going to be a lot better if you're on the further side of your investing career. But I ran the numbers, and this could be a very fun exercise for you to do at home. Yeah. Go look at 20% down on the $450,000 property, 20% down with even lower interest rates now. I think I did like a 2.5%. Now it's obviously like 1.6. And then average out the look over 5 years and look at what you pay towards interest and what you pay towards principal, more importantly towards principal, and take that number and divide what's 5 years. That's 84 months if I'm doing this right. No, I think I got an extra month. Maybe it's 72. Anyways, irregardless, I don't have a calculator in front of me. Take the total principal pay down over 5 years, divide by the number of months. On average, that's how much money you're building in equity every month. And it's going to be like $500-$600 with those numbers I was throwing out there. And like you said, Brett, when you look at that mindset, you go, oh, yeah,
it's about 50% of your mortgage payment, thereabouts. The amortization schedule changes every year and every payment is a little bit different, but it's about 50% of your mortgage payment is building your wealth every month. And the longer that you own it and the further you get into your amortization schedule, the better that gets for you. So
100%. And like, worst case, most, your property doesn't go up in value. But we're already forecasting, like you said at the beginning of the show, Brett, 1.5% inflation. And if we keep this trend, we'll probably go a little bit higher than that. But and
1% growth rate. I've doubled it. Last year I used 0.5%, and now I've doubled it to 1% for our growth rate here. And it makes a difference, as an asset value increase over 5 years. That's 30 G's on the sheet here. So it does add up. But
there you go. Fun conversation.
Great. So anybody that's seen this, if you want a closer look at the sheet, if we can't get it into the feed here and put it as a PDF for you guys to grab, just send me a message. I'll happily email it to you. and you can look over it yourselves. Yeah, that's part of what we do on the investment division of our sales brokerage. Is if investors are looking at deals, we'll help you crunch the numbers on this so you can find out, are you actually making money or not? And then we'll also do this for the accidental landlords that we have, where we'll input your current mortgage payment, your current property taxes, and find out, is owning this thing over the long term the right plan for you, or should you refinance? What is the long-term strategy for you with this property, as a way to kind of get out of that? So if you got anybody that's watching the video that feels they could benefit from having somebody help them run the numbers on their place, you guys can just message me or let me know. I'm happy to help you to facilitate that.
Yeah, and as in kind of what you're saying there too, Brett, I think another nuance here is maybe you don't have a good product, because again, not every product is a good rental product.
Yep.
And then it does make sense. You know what? Pull the ripcord, cut the strings, get rid of this property now, so it doesn't cost you in the long run. But how do you know to make that decision? It's this a second pair of eyes, taking a look at the numbers and make sure things make sense for you.
And a sober second look at your property and your real estate is what a good pro will do to give you some advice on what you should do with it, right? Okay. Accidental landlord of a condo. Yeah, I've been there. I've had a few condos that I've had to hold on to. Maintenance fees are tough, and no cash flow in the moment. Yeah, it's hard. And in my outlook for 2021, I am bearish on the condo market in Calgary, at least. So depending where you are, it'd be good to look at. Now, the one thing regarding condo fees is that a big hunk of your condo fees is going to a reserve fund for your condo. So it's not like you're just throwing it away. I know it comes out of our bank account and it sucks and you don't actually get to see the benefit from it. But as a condominium owner, you own a share of the corporation that governs the condominium, and you get a portion of that reserve fund. And so if your condo is in good shape and you got a good, healthy reserve fund, it does reduce your risk of ownership over the long term. And that is something that should be factored in for owners that might want to wait out the market to get back to a better time. So whether or not you want to sell it or whether or not you want to keep it, in my opinion, depends on two things. The first is the outlook for the real estate market that you're in right now. And is it moving quickly enough where you might be able to be in a good position to sell it? And then, the second one is the opportunity cost. If you sold it and got the money out of it, even if you take a loss, and you can write off the loss too. So if you sold it and take out the money, could you reinvest it into something else and achieve a better cash flow and a better return, right? So we're real estate investors here, right? And so it's a long-term game for us. We're not day traders in this, but within the equity markets, you'll find stockbrokers and all that will get out of an asset, even if they're losing money. They'll sell something because they want to be over across the street to get into something that's a little bit better. Well, if you're looking at your condo and you don't see the end in sight for it, that can make sense to take a loss, get your money out, get into something where you are cash flowing better. And then you'll be in a better position 5 years from now, despite taking that little loss, right? So one step back for 2 steps forward, that type of logic. Yeah,
for sure. And one thing I'll add to what you're saying there, Brett, as well. I was on my condo board for about 5 or 6 years. You actually, this sounds not cool, but you actually want to see every year some small increase in your condo fee. You see your condo fee stay stagnant for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It's coming to get you. Yeah. They have to make up that ground at some point in the future. And if they're not doing small incremental increases year over year, they're going to hit you with a shocking one at some point in the future. And personally, me, I'd rather be the frog in the water where it's slowly getting warmer and warmer, as opposed to jumping into boiling water being, oh my God, I just have to figure out how to do a shock value and manage $300 or $400 increase in my condo fees.
Yeah, you bet. Definitely something to look at. Condos are a totally different ball of wax. There's a lot more variables to consider with them. They can be easy first properties to buy because you don't have to solve a lot of problems. The condo corp and the bylaws, and all that kind of take care of that for you.
Mhm.
So don't feel bad that you're an accidental landlord of a condo, because that is like the easiest way to get into the game. And so many people start off in real estate with a condo ownership. I did. The very first property that I bought was a little tiny condo in Eau Claire in Calgary.
Yeah.
And yeah, right. It's just so much more accessible for people. So that's a very common place to be. But what it will do is it will give you an opportunity to look very closely at your asset, and then all of the factors that are weighed into that and how it's working for you before you do some asset planning and decide, am I going to take the hit and write off a small loss on it, or move ahead and or keep it out and tough it out.
I'm on a show. Okay. Two segues before I lose my train of thought with my 4-year-old. Yes, a show is coming up as we segue off condos and condo fees. There's a whole different legislation around that govern condos called the Condominium Act, and it actually has powers that supersede the RTA. So that is actually a future show topic that I'm working on. So I'm going to use this.
They have a lot of power. The Condominium Act gives a lot of power. Like, they'll collect their fees before the bank gets paid. The condo board gets their money. So if you've got your tenants that are running up charges for you and the condo board is slapping it against you, they're going to get paid. So you better stay nice with your condo board. They're not the ones you want to be fighting with.
Yeah, and then just the last thing too, I'm thinking here, we got a little bit more time, but actually a long time real estate investor I followed for some time just joined this Facebook group in the last 3 to 4 days. I'm sure you know the name, Brett, I'm going to throw it at you, Thomas Byer.
Oh, yeah, Thomas, brilliant.
Yeah.
I remember being on some internet forums with him a long time ago, and I got a lot. He gave even me a lot of advice early in my career with this. So a great addition to your group. And we'll be very fortunate if Thomas spends some time here on the group with us.
Well, if he's watching too, and I listened to some podcasts, and I've followed him for some time. His first property he bought when he came to Canada was also a condo in Edmonton. So we're all part of that boat. But he wrote this book here, 80 lessons learned from 80,000 to 80 million in assets. And anyways, Thomas, I saw your name come across the board there, and I was like, ooh.
Oh, good.
More good knowledge and good people to be with in this group.
Pragmatic advice will be a real asset to the community here.
Yeah. Cool. Well, what did we get through here on your notes there? I got to hop back. We'll wrap up a couple more minutes here.
Just wanted to make sure that the point that I want to talk about with asset management here today instead of property management is pull yourself out of the weeds as a property management owner. And if you're thinking about the bigger picture, the small issues won't grate at you as much. If you think about it, every month you've got somebody else that's building your net worth for you. You'll chill out a little bit more with dealing with your tenants. You won't allow them to own as much of your soul, right? Like it just is, they're not going to get to you as much as they would when you're thinking of yourself as a genuine real estate investor that's out there to add more properties to benefit you and your family going forward. Tenancy management is a part of that. Property management is a component of asset management, but it doesn't need to take over your life. Yeah. And if you manage your assets a little bit better, and we all can, then it makes the property management part of the business just easier to do.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? Let's leave one more sneak preview. I know, just usually good. You know what? You can come to my lap here if you want. But I want, Brett, can you give me a bit of a preview of you? We talked about the 3 layers of looking at your property, right? And it was
so there's property management where you spend time, your ground level. We've talked today about asset management, which is looking at your specific rental property that you're property managing. So for those of us that own just the one property, we'll have that one asset to manage. But in time, as I hopefully get the chance to speak a little bit more with you guys here, we'll talk about portfolio management, where, as real estate investors, it's the same as having, how stock investors or people that manage mutual funds would have a little bit over here in one type of stock and a little bit over there in another one. Well, portfolio management means, you may want to have one property in one market, one property in another market. You may say to yourself, I have enough income property where, I'm making good cash flow. Now I'm feeling ready to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, and you might try and be, buy something where you're chasing a bit more of a growth rate, or you want to add more active appreciation and do more to something. So we'll talk about the right type of property portfolio for where you're at in your investing life cycle as we spend more time together here.
Love it. Yeah, no, I think that's going to be a very insightful conversation, and it's good to have these different perspectives as you approach your real estate. So on that note, let's wrap some things up here. Brett, if people want to find you, where's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the forum here. I check it every day. It's part of my lap here now. So I should hopefully see it. If you got some questions for me, tag me on something. And then go ahead and send me a direct message if you'd like to. I'm an easy guy to get a hold of. Would be happy to talk through whatever, however I can help add value to you. I actively trade in the Calgary market. That's where my brokerage is right now. So if you need specific real estate advice or property management advice, I can do that in a licensed capacity for you here. So I'm happy to do that too if someone has need for it.
Yep, absolutely. And I know we got coming down the track too. We had a really popular show with you guys. I want to say early December. We had a frequently asked questions of property management companies, and we got through like not even half the list with the feedback and the conversation on that live show. So that will be another
some stuff, that's for sure. Down
the pipe. So yeah, Brett will be helping us out. We got both a property management and real estate brokerage perspectives coming. So
Great.
Watch for that content, folks. And this might be the time to end the show with my son going. The only show dedicated to Alberta Landlords.
That's right. Yeah.
Tonight was a little more investment focused. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll get back, as always, answering those questions that you guys are having trouble with in your current situation. Stay active, ask the questions, and let's help each other out, guys.
Great. Thanks very much for having me, Mackenzie.
Thanks.
See you guys.